Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm your host, Juliet Clark. And before we get started today, I have to send you to all those places again. Because you know what? You guys aren't doing a very good job of getting there. So there, you've been scolded. So remember to go over to YouTube and subscribe to us, Superbrand Publishing. All of these interviews, if you're listening on iTunes or one of the audio places, you can see all of these in person over there. Find out what these people look like. Go follow them. And then don't forget to take our Promote, Profit, Publish quiz. You can find it at www.promoteprofitpublishquiz.com and find out if you're really ready to publish. Do you have your audience built? Do you have your marketing campaigns ready? Do you really have what it takes to be a best-selling author? So my guest today is another podcast guest, and she pointed out that I've had a lot of podcast guests lately, so I'm going to have to reformat my stuff here. Her name is Jessica Rhodes, and she's a leading expert on how to leverage podcast guesting for increased brand awareness, more leads, and higher profits. She created a podcast booking industry. She created the podcast booking industry in 2013 when she founded Interview Connections, the first and leading agency of its kind, along with their business partner, Margie Feldhune. Oh my gosh, I should have asked. Is that how you say that?
Margie Feldhune.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Margie. If I ever meet you, you can smack me around. Jessica has quickly scaled Interview Connections to over $1 million in annual revenue with nearly no direct marketing or advertising. Oh, do tell on that one. Their team of in-house booking agents are the podcast powerhouses behind many successful entrepreneurs and businesses, including Ali Brown, Perry Marshall, A. Weber, USA Financial, and more. Jessica has done hundreds of podcast interviews because she's a bragger, both as a guest and a co-host of Rock the Podcast. She's an acclaimed author of Interview Connections, How to Hashtag Rock the Podcast from both sides of the mic, and has been featured speaker at Podcast Multimedia Expo and FinCon. She's also an active member of her community. She volunteers at her son's public schools, mentors a 17-year-old girl in foster care. She lives in Rhode Island with her husband, 2 kids, Nathan and Lucy, and a senior cat. Kitten? A senior cat named Kitten?
Oh, yes.
Okay. She has a very good sense of humor. Welcome.
Hi, Juliet. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to be here too. So you guys, I want you to look at her background because, of course, I'm as obnoxious as ever. So I thought that was a Christmas. Like she had Christmas bulbs up already. Turns out it's a really cool net with seashells, and I'm a freak. So yeah.
I like to keep it interesting. Lots of ocean themed here.
There you go. I like it. Do you live at the beach?
I live in Rhode Island, so we have lots of shoreline, very, very close. So we spend a lot of time at the beach. Yeah.
It always cracks me up. I used to live at the beach. I lived in Manhattan Beach. And when I moved to Utah, I noticed several homes have beach themes. And
they're trying to, feel the beach, even though they don't have it near them.
Well, what's funny is even though I lived at the beach, my house wasn't as beachy as theirs is. And they live in the middle of pretty much nowhere.
Yeah, we used to live really close to the water, and then we moved into Providence. So this is kind of the only little corner of the house where I've kept the beach themed. We don't have it in the rest of the house. So
I actually thought I'd miss the beach when I moved to Utah, and I don't miss it.
Well, Utah's so beautiful. I went out there for a business trip a couple of years ago, and it's just breathtaking. So yeah, the mountains are great.
It is. Yeah. But now it's getting cold, and cold and I are not friends yet.
No. Yeah, Manhattan Beach to the cold. That's a big change.
That's a big cold change. So,
yeah.
So I wanted to talk about today. We've had a couple podcasts in the past where we've talked about how do you get yourself booked? What's the way to do it? But now you've been on a podcast. You actually got that booking for yourself. How do you really promote that and be the guest that people want over and over because you're the promoter?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we were talking about, your interview with Tom Hazard was amazing. And I totally agree and love all of his tips about pitching. So I really am excited to talk about, monetizing your interviews and really making the most of the interviews once you're actually there. And there's a few different strategies for monetizing your guest expert appearances that a lot of people don't really think about. Number one, the thing that most people think about is the exposure, right? You are on a podcast, there's people listening. What are you going to do with that exposure? So we can start there and then kind of go into some other strategies. So, making the most of the exposure is, first of all, sharing your story. So really making sure people see and know who you are. And the host does a great job at that. Like, you all know that I live in Providence, and that is a part of it, because people want to work with people that they feel like they have a connection to, so I guarantee anyone listening who happens to live in Providence, Rhode Island, or even New England, is just, they're going to have more of a connection to me than other people who do what I do, just because we got the whole, we all live in the same part of the country. It's little things like that cannot be underestimated, because people just like having that sense of connection. So, the first part of it is just sharing your story. And then it's about sharing value, being that open book, making sure that you're not holding back or saying, oh, well, I'm going to talk a little bit here, but then you have to go get XYZ to hear, like literally sharing as much valuable, actionable content as you can in the time that you have allotted on that interview.
I shared with you when we jumped on, I just got off a summit. And that was one of the things I said is quit being afraid to like reveal your whole process and give value with it. 95% of the people out there will never pull a trigger. They'll never actually do what you tell them to do. So be transparent about it.
Yes, absolutely. We'll teach everyone everything that we do, because there are going to be people that get it and they want to understand what they're paying you to do. It's why I think it's really smart. Like, for example, if you want to hire a financial planner, it's good to read a book or two about financial planning. So, if you're hiring someone that's legit, not that you're going to read that book because you're going to do your own planning, but it's really helpful for people to see that you're an expert, because then they feel more confident and actually paying you to do the thing that you just taught them how to do.
Exactly. And one of our clients, Merrill Chandler, who is I think he's going to be on right around the same time you are. He has this juicy 2-day workshop where he tells you everything, and you literally sit there and you're like, I will never be able to do this by myself.
Exactly.
Like, what just happened? Like, there's a lot of information in it. So yeah, I love that. Don't be afraid to just put it out there and give people, I especially feel like if you give somebody something actionable that they can go do today, they're going to be a fan forever that works.
Yes, absolutely. It's the power of reciprocity. When people feel like they've gotten so much from you for free, they do feel like they owe you something in return. Like, they are just more likely to want to work with you. So that's a first part of it, is just really make the most of your interview. Like, what do you have? 25 minutes, sometimes up to an hour if it's a longer interview, but don't waste that time. Share as much as you can, as much value that moves the audience to want to get more from you.
That's good. Really good. And share it in a non-salesy way. I hear podcast guests or podcast hosts all the time say, oh, so-and-so got on my show and he sounded like a sales pitch the whole way through.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. This is my second interview that I did today, and my answer is always the same when the host asks, like, what do you want to talk about, or what do you want to make sure we cover? And I always say, whatever your listeners are going to find the most value in. I am here to be of service to your audience, period. So if a host asks you that, you don't want to be like, well, I want to make sure that we talk about my book because that's launching, or I want to make sure we do this. So obviously we all know we're doing this for exposure. We're all entrepreneurs, but you are there to be of service and of value. And then of course, have a call to action, have a free gift or somewhere that the listeners can find you online, because when you do give value and do share your story, if that opportunity arises for the host to say, hey, where can listeners connect with you? Obviously have a place to send them. Don't be like, oh gosh, let me give you 5 websites.
Right. And so this is what you sound like when you get on and you're salesy. You know how like Ted Cruz gets on TV and they ask him a question and he says, and that's why guy, I just introduced legislation too. Like, don't be that guy.
No, don't be a politician.
It's just like, oh, I came to answer a question and now I have to tell you something very self-serving about myself.
Exactly. I totally agree. And I want to give some tips on calls to action because that's a big pitfall that I see where people it's a big missed opportunity. When the host asks you where listeners can connect with you or for a free gift, so many podcast guests are like so excited for that opportunity. They want to say, you can follow me on Instagram and I also have a Facebook page and this is my website. Resist the urge to give every single place that you're hanging out online. Resist that urge. I know you want people to follow you everywhere and you want to make sure they get everything. You want to over deliver in the interview, but with the call to action, just give one. Maybe two, but one.
Right? So my address is, and you can stop by any time as long as you bring a check.
It's way too much. People are listening on the go. I only listen to podcasts on my phone, so I'm not sitting at my computer. If I want to get in touch with the guest, it has to be something that I can remember, something that I can spell. If you have a name that's hard to spell, you don't don't have them spell your name in the domain. Like, come up with the URL where people can just easily type it in, or maybe a text call to action, but keep it really simple.
So don't send them to Margie. How do you say that?
we don't use Margie's name as the domain.
Don't send them there. But that's a great point. It's so easy. Let's say you have, JulietClark.com and people spell Juliet wrong. You can send them to something much easier and forward it there and they'll remember it. Something snappy to do that. I actually do that with my calendar. I have the chatwithjuliet.com because it's easy to remember. Perfect. So, tell us more about that because so many people, you bring up such a great point because I only listen to podcasts on my phone and usually when I'm running or I'm in the car or so. Yeah.
So there's a few different calls to action that, I recommend that I find really valuable. And it really depends what your goals are and what your business is. But I think that people overthink this a lot. They think they have to come up with a whole funnel and do this whole landing. They really over-engineer it. When in reality, people that hear you on a podcast are usually like ready to connect with you, or they just want to find you on social media. They just want to build a relationship. Usually when I hear a guest that I really like, I find them on, first I see if they're on Instagram because that's where I spend a lot of time, or on Facebook. I just want to socially connect with them first. So kind of keep the barrier to entry low. If you have a great lead magnet, like I love quizzes. I know you said you got a quiz. Quizzes are great. People love to get that information. If you have a really great, report or something where they're going to get valuable information, send them to a simple landing page. But it could be as simple as, hey, send me an email. I mean, we have guests that we book that use their email as their call to action, and they've gotten amazing opportunities and clients who just hear them on a podcast, send them an email, and bada bing, bada boom, they have business. So I think simplicity is the key.
It definitely is. And I'm going to give you guys a tip beyond that on there. If you're a podcast listener, if you're appealing to podcast listeners and you have a book, have an audiobook. Because those people are audiobook listeners as well.
Yes, that's a great point.
Yeah. So don't be like, go over to my blah, 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 blah book page. I mean, send them to Audible because that's where they can actually take out their phone with the Audible app and get that book right then and there. So be smart about that as well.
Yeah. Knowing how people consume content is really important. Not everyone's going to listen to a podcast. Not everyone's going to read a book. So you want to be available in multiple formats.
Great. So what about after? Because I have people on podcasts all the time, and I find that the more famous they are, the less they promote, which really sucks. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And some of them have asked me to be on my podcast. It's not like I sought them out. So what does a good podcast guest do afterwards?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're right. First of all, this is such a misconception. People start a podcast and they're like, I want famous people on my show that are going to help me grow. And I'm like, the people with the bigger audiences are a lot more discerning in what they're promoting, or they don't promote. Who knows why? But a great podcast guest who really wants to maximize the opportunity is going to promote it. They're going to make the most of it. podcast guesting is not just showing up and doing a great interview. That's only one part of it. It's your relationship with the host before and after the episode. I mean, you and I met through, a networking group. We've had a call. I interviewed you on Facebook Live. Like now I'm here. Like I didn't just like come on your show and then we're never going to talk again, or we've never talked before. So, some actionable tips for listeners is listen to their show beforehand, listen to an episode, leave a rating and a review. I always recommend listening and then leaving a rating and review, because I never want people to leave like a dishonest one or just something that's like, great show. Like, be honest, leave a great rating and review, post about it. I posted on Facebook today. I'm excited to be on Juliet's show. Just listen to this episode. Go check it out. Like, can't wait to share. Like, just share about it, because not only is that helpful to the host and their show, it also is positioning you to your audience as somebody that's getting interviewed. When your following sees that you're out getting interviewed, they see you as somebody that's in demand. They're like, oh, I wonder what, she must be up to something. She's out there getting interviewed. And same thing after the interview goes live and after you record, like, just be talking about it, be promoting it, be connected. Like, I realized, oh, Juliet, aren't our friends on Facebook yet? So I sent you a friend request. Like, be connected with the host, because podcast hosts a lot of times end up becoming like, they work with their guests. I mean, I interviewed someone on my podcast recently and I became her client like the next day, because after the interview, I was like, oh my God, like, I need what you have. And that happens all the time.
It does. And full transparency, I got kicked off Facebook 2 months ago. That's why you had to refriend me.
That's why.
Yeah. The great conservative purge. And I'm not even conservative. I'm a libertarian. So there you go.
Okay.
But it's such a great point. I mean, when we jumped on today, I said, hey, you interviewed me. I don't think I ever got the link. So let's talk about that strategy. Because I think one of the things we do as guests is we go, oh, look, I got the promo materials and it's a one and done. And there's so many things we can do to really promote, long term and keep coming back to it.
Yeah. And this all comes back to having systems in place, because people get into podcasting or podcast guesting because it is easy, right? It's just showing up and having conversations and creating great content. But then to really maximize it and take it to the next level and make the most of it, you do need systems in place to then promote it and leverage it, like making sure your guests, get the links and the marketing assets and the sample posts and all of that, making sure stuff gets scheduled or rescheduled if need be. Like, all of that takes systems, and usually it's more than just the entrepreneur can handle themselves. And so if somebody doesn't have, an assistant or a marketing team member that can do a lot of that, it just doesn't get done. And I speak from experience, because up until this year, I did it all myself in terms of marketing. Now I have an admin assistant and we have a marketing team member. So whenever an interview goes live, I just send it to Sarah May and I'm like, hey, go share and promote this. Or if I need to schedule an interview, I'm like, Ava, go schedule this. So I think that's really important if you're going to be getting into podcasting. You don't have to have a team in place right now, but just know that should be on your horizon of like building out the systems and getting the team in place to support you as you scale and leverage.
That is so true. And I actually, it's interesting you said that. I just bought a program management system this morning.
Amazing.
Because I just said, okay, I'm getting these bigger and bigger book projects and I have the quizzes. So, but I'm fully, now that you've said that, I can probably manage the content calendars and all that through there as well. So nice. Thanks. Yeah. Now I have a lot of work to do this week. Thank God it's going to snow. Okay. So, how do you do that? Like, how do you get in? I've seen a lot of nice things and I'll share with you guys that I shared with Jessica earlier. I actually have a system where my content calendar, I share my new podcast every week. I share 2 older ones and I share 2 interviews that I have been on with other people. Not because I'm a narcissist, because of course I am, but no, I'm just kidding. But because I want to be that good guest who shares their stuff over and over. So how do you create a system? And then I'll share another one that I've seen that I really love with you.
Yeah. So I'm all about simplicity. I know there's amazing like softwares and project management tools and like marketing calendars that automate it and all that. I know we like to use Hello Woofy. They help us like create a lot of great posts. They know what emojis to use and things like that. So we use Hello Woofy. He's a client of ours, the founder. And, yeah. Anyway, so we use that to create the post, but then it's just about having we have simple Google Docs where it says like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, what are we posting on what platforms? We have a Google spreadsheet where we have listed all of the interviews that we've done, all the shows we've been on, who is the host, what is their email. So just having it all organized and then again, having that set day where we say, okay, this is the day that we're going to be posting an interview that we've done. If no new interview went live that week, we're grabbing an interview that, went live a month ago and resharing it. So I think it's just about scheduling it out. And then I do want to mention for folks that are like, oh my God, I can't, they just can't wrap their brain around all of the systems and everything. Keep it simple. If you don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to be creating like a whole toolkit of marketing assets for your guests, start with emailing your guests with a link and saying, would you share this? Like start small and then work your way up from there.
Right. No, that's really good. One thing I've seen lately that I love, and I haven't had time to do it on my own site is, do you know Scott Carson?
Yes.
Yes.
I think. Is he a real estate investor?
Yeah. He teaches real estate investors.
Yes.
Yeah. Scott does so many interviews. He actually has on his media page on his site the covers and the links to every interview he's been on. And it's incredible. It not only showcases that he's highly in demand, but it's beautiful presentation for these other people as well. So
yes,
I love that. Yeah.
I love that too. That's something that I always recommend as well is having a press page on your site because people that find you, we're talking about like, getting booked and monetizing the interviews, but people are going to find you through other ways. And if they see that you are available for interviews and that you do interviews, they'll start requesting you. So it's always great to get incoming requests as well. And part of the way you can attract those interviews is through those, press pages. So I love that.
Exactly. So I lost my question. Oh no. Oh no.
I can give an example of another press page if that would help.
That'd be fantastic since I just had a giant brain fart.
I know. I'll just talk and then you'll come up with it again. Okay. So another example of a great press page is our client, Tony Guarnacha, has one. And again, his last name is Guarnacha, so he is not exactly giving that out as a call to action. MeetTonyG.com, and he's done a beautiful job of showcasing his interviews on his site. So I know it's helpful to see different press pages. Everyone's got different styles. So I wanted to share that as if anyone wants to see Tony's website and see how he promotes his interviews. And he does a great job. He's all about leverage. So he does a great job at people, he posts about them. People will DM him and invite him onto their show. So that's another great example.
That's cool. So my question was, if you're going to have a page like that, should you have also some sort of fill out form where people can request you?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I have it all on my press page. I've got, our email, phone number. If you'd like to invite us onto your show, reach out. I would say for folks that are maybe really high demand and they're getting a lot of requests, it's totally fine to have a simple form that says, put a link to your show. And then any other qualifying information, like how do you decide if you're going to be a guest on someone's show? Maybe ask some of those questions in the form. So definitely.
Right. And that doesn't have to be like a big expensive form. I use JotForm for mine.
I love JotForm. I think we've talked about JotForm before.
Yeah, it's like $18 a month and I use it for everything. I have contracts. I have all sorts of stuff in there. So very, very, very used. So where can we find you if we want to find out more? And you have a workshop or masterclass coming up, don't you?
Yeah. So we do free masterclasses to teach business owners how to monetize their interviews, how to get started as a podcast guest. So you can register for the next one at interviewconnections.com/masterclass.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on today. That was some great information.
Thanks, Juliet.